So,
And we're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to join us. I'm Ian from the Steelers and That. This is our second year of doing these WPIAL preview shows. With me is AJ from WPIAL Football Zone and Steve, who does a lot of stuff WPIAL related and is on Twitter at BuckFever422. If you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick, I'll send a quick tweet that we're live.
hello,
Hi,
everybody. I am WPIAL Football Zone, and I run AJ WPIAL and my Facebook page.
And I'm Steve, like he said. I am on Twitter at BuckFever422, and I post a lot of stuff about WPIAL football, basketball, and sometimes baseball as well. So give me a follow.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining tonight, guys, and thanks everyone for tuning in out there, whether you're watching us live or watching us later on YouTube. I think this automatically posts to YouTube, so this is only like the 6th or 7th time I've done this. So we're still learning the ropes here on our as of yet unnamed WPIAL preview show. Before we get started for the season, we do want to send our thoughts and prayers out to DeMonte Brona and his family. DeMonte is a senior running back at Aliquippa who was recently diagnosed with leukemia. So our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family, DeMonte. Best of luck as you go through this trying time.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, couldn't have said any better.
So rolling into our previews here, we can start at the top with Quad A, the biggest classification, where Pine Richland is the defending champions and look to get back to Heinz Field, where they may actually get to take a live ram into the stadium this year if the student section doesn't lose it in the parking lot. So I guess we could start in the Northern 8 Conference, which is kind of right in Steve's wheelhouse, since I know that you're up there in the North Hills area.
Yeah, for sure, and that'll be most of the games that I tweet about this year and talk about online. Being an NA grad, going to a lot of North Hills games and such. Pine Richland, they have a lot to replace from last year. They lost Ben DiNucci, obviously. Connor Slomka's gone. A bunch of their top receivers are gone. So it might be a little bit of struggle for them this year, but Phil Jerkovich is supposed to be a Division I quarterback, and he's only a sophomore, but I've seen the kid play basketball a lot. He's big. He's athletic. He's very versatile. But I think the conference will be Pittsburgh Central Catholics to lose. There's just too much talent there on both sides of the ball. They had 5 shutouts last year. Both their losses came to Pine Richland, so I don't think that'll be a problem this year. If they can find somebody that's a steady quarterback this year, I don't think they'll have very many close games in Quad A, and I see them winning the Quad A title this year. But I think it's the conference. Northern 8 isn't very good it's not great this year as it normally is. I think North Allegheny will be involved. They've got some good running backs. Mike Pope is back. Riley Truman will take over at quarterback.
Michael Pope is really good.
Yeah, he's very, very shifty, and North Allegheny always has good line play to create holes for their running backs. So we'll see how that works out this year. The conference is just kind of, I don't know, it's muddled. North Hills isn't great. Nick Santucci's back at running back for them. Fox Chapel's not great. They'll probably make the playoffs, though. And then you've kind of got Butler, Seneca, and Shaler down near the bottom, which Shaler, I don't know. I think they're going to end the season with the second longest losing streak in WPIAL history. So.
Yeah, I think their losing streak's sitting at 31 games entering the year right now, and it doesn't look like they have many signs of turning it upward. At least at least this year. I think they do have a couple. They had a couple sophomores start for them last year. I think their quarterback was a sophomore, so they've got some returning players. But when you're the second lowest scoring team in the entire WPIAL, you got a long way to go. I think they averaged like 6.5 points a game, and their defense gave up like 45 points a game. So Shaler's certainly got a long way to go.
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
And the WPIAL didn't help them out with their non-conference schedule as well. I know I can't remember exactly who they play, but I know they're not very easy games.
Woodland Hills and Penn Trafford, they got hammered.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. Maybe they can keep a few games.
So, yeah, I definitely agree with you about Central Catholic. That I think they're not only the best team in the Northern 8, but the best team in all of Quad A right now. I mean, they've got probably 5 or 6 seniors that are going to get Division I scholarship offers, and then a handful of juniors as well. So that team is just absolutely loaded. Here's a fun question for you. How many games does Central go before they give up a point?
Let me look at the schedule.
actually wasn't.
Pine Ridge will definitely put up points.
Filler time here.
I know that.
Give me some filler time here.
All right, I'll give some filler for you guys since I threw out a tough one for you. In Quad A as a whole, I think there's 7 or 8, I'll call them Hines-capable teams, and the Northern 8 has 3 of those. I'd say Central Catholic is not only Hines-capable, but championship-capable. I'd say Pine Richland and North Allegheny, if they get the right draw in the playoffs, could at least make the semifinals, if not make it all the way to Hines Field. Over in the foothills, which we'll get to in a minute, Penn Trafford and McKeesport are definitely the top 2 teams. I think they were both semifinalists last year and are both capable of making it to Hines. And then in the Southeastern Conference, which was a little bit of a playoff disappointment last year, I'd say Penn Hills and Woodland Hills are definitely capable of putting together a run to Hines Field. And you can never count out Upper St. Clair and Jim Render down there.
Yep, I got their schedule up here. So they start at Bethel Park. Is that correct?
Bethel Park?
Yeah.
I think Bethel Park will be able to score. Levi Matheny is very good. And they've got a running back, their second leading rushers back from last year. So I think Bethel will score on them. But I don't think it'll be very many points. Maybe 6 or 7. They'll get 1 touchdown.
I'll go week 3 with North Allegheny. I think they definitely shut out Shaler in week 2, but I'll say North Allegheny is the first one to get points on them in week 3.
I'll go with Bethel Park. And then what I would like to say, here comes a big surprise. My Elite 8 rankings.
Oh, yeah.
Defending champions. I got Pine Richland at 1. You know why? If you're the defending champions, until they lose, I have them number 1. And they got a big showdown up at against North Allegheny in week 2, which will be, that's when they might lose. Then I got Central Catholic at 2. On the Hills at 3, Penn Trafford at 4, North Allegheny at 5, McKeesport at 6, 7, Upper St. Clair, and North Hills 8. But I think the Northern 8 is a really good conference, though. I mean, you got North Allegheny and Central Catholic, they're just so good, and then Pine Richland, of course.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the best top-to-bottom conference. You can definitely see, except for Shaler, I mean, you can definitely see Seneca Valley and Butler being in some games. So, yeah, except for Shaler, any given night, I guess, except for Central Catholic as well. So.
And actually, I think Butler was just missed the playoffs by 1 game last year. I think if they'd beaten Altoona out of conference in week 1, or maybe it was Baldwin, whoever they played week 1 last year, if they would have beat them, I think they would have made the playoffs.
Their first 2 games were out of conference. I think they were at Altoona and then they were against Baldwin, and they lost the Altoona game, which knocked them out. They also lost their last 5, so that didn't help either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since we mentioned the Southeastern Conference a little bit, talking about Bethel Park, and AJ, you've got Woodland Hills as your number 3 team in the rankings. Um, we want to go down there. Last year, Penn Hills was a bit of a surprise champion for the Southeastern Conference. They knocked off arch rival Woodland Hills in the season finale, and but then the conference had a bit of a disappointment in the playoffs. They won just 1 game. Woodland Hills was the only team to advance out of the first round in the playoffs.
Yeah, Penn Hills was a big stunner in round 1 with Plum upsetting them from the Foothills Conference.
Yeah, you just didn't expect Penn Hills to, high-powered offense with, Billy Kisner running around everywhere, and they only scored, 5 points in that game? Is it 5?
I think it was 5, yeah. Yeah. Kisner's back for his senior season this year, so he's and I think he's committed to Toledo already, so he's certainly a talent and, should put Penn Hills right back at the top of that conference again this year. I got to think it's going to come down to Woodland Hills and Penn Hills once again, but Woodland Hills is absolutely stacked again this year. I mean, Miles Sanders, their running back's a Penn State recruit. Jeremiah Jones, their quarterback, Joel Shaw, they should all have Division I offers, and then they've got some other good players along the lines too. So Woodland Hills has the players. They just kind of faded towards the end of last season.
Yeah, Woodland Hills, I mean, I think they're hands down. Then followed by probably Penn Hills, and then Upper St. Clair, and then Bethel Park. Bethel Park, you watch out for Bethel Park. They got some talent there, though.
Yeah, I actually, Woodland Hills is pretty much clear cut for me. I actually had Bethel Park second. I just think Levi Matheny's, if he can stay healthy the whole year, which is hard because he pretty much does everything for them, that'll be a big key for them. And Penn Hills, they surprised me last year, so I don't know if the Magic's there again this year. I've got them third. And then a lot of teams just muddled in the middle there again. It's Upper St. Clair, Mount Lebanon, Peters Township. Just no clear-cut teams to make those final few playoff spots for me, at least in my eyes.
I mean, Mount Lebanon surprised a few people last year. Yeah. So who knows what they can do.
Yeah, they
got a
real nice. Get in.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, Mount Lebanon has a dual-threat quarterback coming back. Eddie Jenkins threw for, 1,300 yards last year and rushed for over 600. So that's 900 yards of offense and 20 touchdowns coming back for them. And I think he's got his leading receiver coming back, too.
Yeah, they have to figure out a way. They lost their final 4 games last year. I think the schedules are the same, except they're flipped, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they got to figure out a way to win those games. They got a big offensive line this year, so they've got some experience there as well. So I'm interested to see what Jenkins can do this year.
Yeah, they're a team to watch out for, definitely. Mount Lebanon.
Yeah. They did lose their Final 4, although one was to North Hills out of conference, which probably should have been a bit of a harbinger of how, last year everyone thought that the Southeastern Conference was the best in Quad A, and then they kind of got stunned out of the first round of the playoffs. So, there were some signs coming in, like Mount Lebanon getting beat by North Hills, and then they lost to Woodland Hills and Upper St. Clair in their last 2 conference games, and then just ran into an absolute buzzsaw in McKeesport in the first round of the playoffs.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Which brings us to the Foothills Conference, which is going to be Penn Trafford and McKeesport, again, fighting it out at the top.
Penn Trafford, I love Penn Trafford. I mean, they're loaded. I mean, they got Brett LaFoon. They got Timmy Vecchio. And then McKeesport with Khalid Hudson. He's good as well.
Yeah, I definitely think McKeesport, I actually have them winning the conference this year. With Khalid Hudson, Tamar Sutton, Mark Conrady's back, and they always have a great defense at McKeesport. I think they were second best in the Quad A last year. Penn Trafford lost their leading running back from last year, which we'll see if that comes back to hurt them, because if you get too one-dimensional with LaFoon and Vecchio, teams are going to be, on the passing game pretty quickly for them.
Yeah, that's going to be the whole key for Penn Trafford if they can find a running back.
Yeah, I actually, since AJ dropped his Elite Eight rankings, I don't have an Elite Eight, but I'll give you a championship prediction. I'm actually going to go with Central Catholic over Penn Trafford in the championship game for Quad A. Like I said, I think there's 7 Heinz-capable teams in Quad A, maybe 8, but I like Penn Trafford to kind of find their way through the fray and get there to Heinz. Which I think that'll be their first trip to the championship.
Then look up
97. Yeah, first trip since 97 for Penn Trafford.
That's a long time, yeah.
Hey, here's another conference too that's kind of muddled. You can't really sift through other than McKeesport and Penn Trafford and maybe Plum, who are the other 3, maybe 4 playoff teams from this conference. I mean, Altoona was very good last year, but they lost just about everybody from last year's team. Connellsville lost a lot after making the playoffs. Kiski was supposed to be good last year, and who knows what happened to them. So
they just couldn't play defense. They gave up a ton of points.
47.7 points per game.
Yeah.
That's not going to win any games. And then Plum, Norwin, and Hempfield as well.
Yeah, I've got Plum, Norwin, and Hempfield as 3, 4, 5 in that conference, and like you said, I think Plum's definitely the best of the rest. That they've got some players coming back, including Jake Chalpa, who might be one of the best kickers in the WPIAL. He made 9 last year, which tied for the WPIAL lead, and he drilled a couple over 40 yards. I'm pretty sure. I don't have him in front of me, but I read an article about him, and he hit some long ones last year.
Plum and Norwin are going to be decent. I mean, Plum has some returning talent, and of course they shot Penn Hills last year in the playoffs, which no one saw coming after who they beat the week before that.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with you there. So, you guys want to?
Everybody just writes off the Foothills Conference, and Plum just pulls that upset and like, bam.
Yeah, and then Penn Trafford and McKeesport both made the semifinals, so it was a pretty good year overall for the Foothills Conference last year.
Yeah, that throw with North Allegheny.
Which conference will get the wild card this year?
That's a tough call. I think the WPIAL changed how they're calculating the wild card this year, because there was something that changed. I remember trying to pull it up now that they instead of dropping a game from the Foothills, I think they're counting all the Foothills games, and then the head-to-head Northern 8 Southeastern games count. So, because last year, like the Foothills teams always had an advantage because they had 9 teams, and you just dropped one of your losses, or you dropped your worst loss. But now those head-to-head Northern 8 Southeastern games count. So I actually have Butler penciled in as my wild card. I kind of like, of my 6th place teams, I like their matchup the best. I'll put it that way.
First time since 1999 for them.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with you. I think the Northern
Actually,
Eight's
didn't Butler
Still
make?
be the Northern 8, yeah.
No, Butler made the playoffs a couple years ago, I think. Yeah, 2012.
I can't remember that. They might. I think
Yeah.
you're right, yeah.
Yeah, they did. They did. So.
my error.
Yeah, I know they did. I remember it now, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I've got Butler penciled into that spot, but it's I kind of liked. I think Butler plays Baldwin head to head, which pretty much could decide that last spot.
Baldwin's they're pretty decent. I mean, they had some talent last year, yeah.
They graduated a lot of people this year.
They lost Sterling Jenkins too, I think. Or was that the year?
Yeah,
before?
Nick Altavilla was their quarterback. He graduated too.
Doug Altavilla is gone.
Or Doug, sorry. Nick, I think Nick's his brother as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So AJ gave his rankings, and I threw out my championship predictions. Steve, you got any predictions for us for how things will break down in the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to you. I think Central Catholic will be there. I think they'll win. But I think they'll be playing Woodland Hills. It all depends on how the brackets break down. Woodland Hills, and I think McKeesport and Penn Trafford will be in the Final Four once again. Just think those four teams are clearly above the rest of the classification.
AJ, you got a championship prediction?
I'll go with. I'm gonna go with Central Catholic and North Allegheny. Or no, not North Allegheny. Central Catholic and Woodland Hills.
I was going to say North Allegheny.
North Allegheny is a nice sleeper pick, though. I mean, last year I think we were all talking about Seneca Valley being there for the championship game, and then they had a lot of injuries that hit them. So, and no one's really talking about Pine Richland running the table, and they made it all the way to the state championship.
Watch out for Pine Richland, though. I mean, Phil Dracovic, he's really good. I've seen his highlight tape. He's really good. They got some receivers, and they got some running backs, so that's my sleeper team, even though they're number one.
We had this debate last year in Class A with North Catholic and Clareton that North Catholic's number one until you knock them off, which Avonworth did. But we'll get to there in a little bit. But speaking of moving on, moving down to AAA, where Central Valley might be the new dynasty in AAA. I mean, what they've been able to put together in 5 years since the merger has just been incredible. I mean, they've won 2 championships, been to the final another time, and been to the semifinals the other 2 years. So, everyone wants to talk about Thomas Jefferson and West Allegheny, and those are the teams with the tradition in AAA, but Central Valley deserves to be listed right up there with them.
Yeah, they do. I completely agree. I mean, the Parkway Conference is loaded this season. So is the AAA. I mean, there's just so many teams that could come out.
Yeah.
There's no two. Like last year, we had West Allegheny and Central, and no, not Central Catholic. We had Central Valley. Those were the 2 clear-cut teams. This year, we have no clear-cut teams, really.
I actually really like Montour this year. Everyone talks about Central Valley and West Allegheny there in the Parkway Conference, but both of those schools graduated a lot of players from their teams that went to the championship game the last 2 years. And Montour brings back a lot of senior experience, and they've got some talented players there.
Yeah, I saw. I would have put them first in the Parkway for sure, but saw that Randall Labrie tore his ACL in the off season, and he won't be he won't be playing quarterback for them this year.
They got to find a quarterback. Yeah, that's going to be the whole key for Montour. That's a big question mark for Montour.
Yeah, they got their leading running back and wide receiver back, but yeah, you gotta find somebody that's comfortable being a quarterback as well. That's definitely a big loss for them.
Yeah, and they play Central Valley the first week too.
That should be a good game because Central Valley lost a lot of talent from last year's team. Lost all their running backs pretty much, but Chris Callahan's back under center, and he's pretty tough. He threw for over 1,300 yards last year, so that should be an interesting game.
Central Valley was crazy last year. They had two quarterbacks that both threw for like over 1,200 yards.
John George was the other, yeah, up until he got injured. They don't have that explosive playmaker this year like they did with Robert Foster or Jordan Whitehead. I mean, to get two of those players on your team, that's luck right there. I mean, they're two spectacular players.
And West Allegheny doesn't have a lot of talent back yet either this year. They lost a lot of people from last year. Terrence Stevens back. He's getting recruited Division I. I think their second leading rusher's back as well. So, it'll be a tight race for the top 3 spots in the Parkway for sure. All their defenses are always very good, so it's hard to shake this one down.
Then the one sleeper I want to point out in that conference is Newcastle. Newcastle could really make some noise in that conference also, because they got Malik Hooker's younger brother, Marcus Hooker. They have some other guys too I read about. I can't remember their names.
Yeah, their quarterback, Pat Mininock. They got running back Jalen Glenell. Couple.
Yeah.
Their defense was just awful last year, though. They gave up like 32 points a game. You're not going to win very many games when you're doing that.
Who they beat in the playoffs? Or I think didn't they beat Hampton? I think they did. I don't know.
All the Greater Allegheny teams made the quarterfinals, I think, except for Holiday.
Newcastle got bounced in the first round last year. I don't remember who beat them.
Forget who beat Hampton.
Hampton lost to Ringgold in that overtime game in the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
For 2, and that was that. Newcastle lost to Hampton 33-14 in the first round of the playoffs.
Actually, one team that I'll throw out as a potential sleeper, not to win the title in the Parkway, but at least to make the playoffs, is Ambridge. Austin French threw for like 1,400 yards and 19 touchdowns last year. He's back, and then they got their 2 leading rushers back who pretty much split carries last year and combined for like 800 yards. So Ambridge hasn't been to the playoffs since 2005, so just making the playoffs would be a big jump forward for that program.
Yeah, that would be. It would be a good. They are a sleeper team. I agree. I mean, they got some talent there. Yeah, their quarterback is really good.
Yep. So since we were just talking about the Greater Allegheny Conference and Hampton's the defending champion there, that conference is absolutely loaded this year. I mean, there's really any one of 4, 5, maybe 6 teams that could win that conference. I mean, Franklin Regional, Indiana, Mars, Knock, Hampton, Gateway, they're all really loaded teams right now.
That conference it's just as wide open as I think the Parkway is. I mean, you got just so many teams there, yeah. I mean, you got Indiana, you got Hampton, you got Mars, who knows what they can do. Gateway, I really like Indiana and Franklin Regional the most, though. I mean, Indiana, they got Dylan Stapleton, I think is his name. Then they returned their quarterback also, so they're going to be a pretty good team.
Yeah, I picked Franklin Regional to win the conference, but I really like Indiana. They just they had some problems on defense last year, and the actually one of the most shocking things um, one of the most shocking things last year was that like no one in the Northern Eight or sorry not Northern Eight no one in the Greater Allegheny Conference scored like 300 points on the whole regular season. Hampton had the most at 287, which is like 31 a game. So no one in the conference averaged more than 31 points a game. Yet somehow York at the bottom gave up 46 points a game. Like I don't know how it happened. And York got moved to the Big Nine conference this year because Armstrong's up in the Greater Allegheny Conference now, which they're a team that I really don't know. I mean, mergers have been successful in the past from a football standpoint. Woodland Hills has had a great success since their merger. Central Valley, who we were just talking about, has been really good since their schools merged. But it's hard to say with Armstrong. I mean, Catania and Ford City have both been good, but they both graduated a lot of players from their teams last year. So it's kind of hard to predict how Armstrong will be. And then you have Hollidaysburg, who's playing in their last year in the WPIAL. They're moving back to, I think they're in District 6. Yeah, they're moving back to District 6 next year with realignment because I guess traveling from Altoona is a bit too far for them, which I don't blame them. That's quite a hike.
Yeah, Knock is another team that they got some talent too. I mean, who knows what they can do. And then Gateway I'm sure has talent. And we'll see. There's just so many question marks in that conference. I mean, it's wide open. There's like
Gateway
4 or 5 teams that could possibly win it.
Gateway's got.
Yeah, like you guys were saying, I think there's 6 teams that can really vie for the conference title. The defenses in this conference were so good last year, and you expect the same thing. Usually, coaches that have good defenses year to year are pretty defensive minded. So, yeah, it's just hard to tell what's going to go on in this conference. But for sure, you feel bad for Armstrong. They see the success of Woodland Hills and Central Valley, and they're trying to merge, and they got a couple of guys back, but they're just getting in the conference at a wrong time.
Yeah, maybe, Ian, you might have to come up with another chart with scenarios again this year for that conference, huh? Remember that one with all the helmets?
Yeah, honestly, I was thinking about it. Like, the conference champion here could legitimately have 2 or 3 losses. Like, all these teams could just knock each other off because, Indiana's going to have a fantastic passing offense, but like Franklin Regional, they always play great defense. So, you've got these run-oriented teams like Mars and Knock and Hampton against some passing teams. So like Indiana's primarily a passing team. Franklin Regional's quarterback Santino Birdie's kind of a dual threat guy. He threw for over 1,000 and ran for over 400 last year. And I think their top 2 receivers are coming back along with one of their 3 rushers. So, Franklin Regional's got a lot of experience there. Indiana's got a ton of talent. They can find a way to beat some of these defenses, and it's just, all these teams can just find ways to knock each other off. And like somehow, shockingly, Hollidaysburg always finds a way to kind of squeak their way into the playoff discussion by the end of the year too. On paper they never look great heading into a season, and then they're always kind of just like hovering right around the edge of the playoff spot. They've made the playoffs 3 out of the last 5 years, and I think all 3 of them they got the wild card spot in AAA.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good fact.
Yeah, I think Hollidaysburg actually has the most experience back from last year's team. but they only scored 14 points a game, even though their defense only allowed 17 points a game. You know, it's how good are they going to be with one additional year of experience? This conference will be interesting for sure.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, it will be. And actually, you know, for as loaded as the Greater Allegheny and Parkway conferences are, the Big Nine conferences kind of bringing up the rear in AAA. I mean, Thomas Jefferson's always good, and you know, TJ and Ringgold play each other week one, which is probably going to be one of those weird scenarios where a week one game winds up deciding the conference champion, just like it did last year. But I don't see anyone in that conference that's as good as Thomas Jefferson or Ringgold is.
Thomas Jefferson, they just spit out talent year after year. And every year they come up, they just have another linebacker year after year. That's great. I mean, it just wouldn't be a Thomas Jefferson team without a linebacker.
Yeah, they have a ton of running backs coming back from last year too. A bunch of guys that saw a lot of time with who was it, Austin Kemp last year that was hurt towards the end of the year, and
Yeah.
you know, they've been in the semis 16 out of 17 years. There's just such good tradition there, and yeah, I mean they beat Ringgold 49-6 last year. I don't see that changing this year. I think it's going to be something similar to that, and it stinks for Ringgold to know that, you know, your week one matchup is the matchup for the title pretty much.
Ringgold's actually got some talent down there. I mean, they might have lost Nico Law. They got that running back Shakar Berry, I think his name is. He's pretty
Yeah,
good.
he had like 1,400 yards last year.
Even Brendan Small's back last year as well, and he had over 700 yards last year. So they'll have some good running backs again, and George Martin, I guess, is going to take over for Nico Law, and he's supposed to be a good runner too. So I think they'll be second in the conference. I don't know that they can repeat their semifinal performance from last year, but it'll be interesting to see. Like we said, the conference is kind of the third tier conference in AAA for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Yeah, although that being said, you know, they did put two teams into the semifinals last year with TJ and Ringgold, but you know, I don't think Ringgold is as good this year as they were last year. And I've kind of got West Mifflin, Bell Vernon, Elizabeth Forward, kind of just penciled into those last three playoff spots there. Just kind of because they bring more back than everybody else. But there's not really a lot happening in the bottom end of that conference.
The only thing happening in the bottom end of that conference is Bell Vernon's new turf. It's gold. Maybe it'll distract some teams and they'll get lucky.
Or they won't be able to see Thomas Jefferson in their gold uniforms running all over.
They'll blend in.
Or Ringgold, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, you have Elizabeth Ford in that fourth spot. I've got or that fifth spot. I've got Laurel Highlands actually in that fifth spot. They've got Jimmy Pierce back. He threw for over 1,200 yards last year, ran for over 600. He's got his top receiver back. They made the playoffs last year. They did give up 40 points a game, which they need to figure that out for sure. But yeah, Elizabeth Ford, Uniontown, Trinity maybe fighting for that last spot. And then we get the exciting game, Albert Gallatin against York. When is that one? I might have to go to that one.
A pillow fight of the year.
If I can find either school, I might have to go to that game.
Shameless plug for my blog. I have maps in each of my preview posts that have the locations of the stadiums on them if you scroll into where the helmets are.
No, I agree with Steve. Laurel Highlands a good team. I mean, they'll definitely make the playoffs, but their defense does have to improve. If their defense improves, they could make some noise. I mean, they wouldn't beat Thomas Jefferson though. I mean, Thomas Jefferson's just too good.
Here we go. Real quick. Albert Gallatin at York, Week 1.
Oh man,
Week 1, Friday, 7:30.
it's at York. It's at York too. That's a little bit closer than driving all the way down past Uniontown.
That beats Thomas
That's true.
Jefferson and Ringgold, that's for sure.
Just think about it. One of these teams will be tied for the conference lead after Week 1.
That is beautiful, yeah.
Should we make picks on that game? Can we do picks
Oh
here?
man. Oh gosh, I don't even
York.
know.
I'll take York.
You're going with York? It's at York, so you're going with York?
Because they pulled that upset against as a 15 seed the year before. Just based on
That was in Double A.
logic.
I'm going to go Albert Gallatin. Hunter Moody will lead him to a 7-2 victory.
So here's the tough thing is all right, so Albert Gallatin gave up like 38 plus in every game last year except the game they lost to Uniontown 19-7. And York, as I had mentioned before, somehow gave up 46 points a game in the Greater Allegheny Conference where no one averaged over 31 points a game. Oh gosh, I'm gonna go with Albert Gallatin just because they can't believe I'm saying this. They averaged 9 points a game last year. York averaged 6. So I'll go 12-6 with 3 missed extra points in the game.
I'll go 11-10.
We're masochists.
Let's put on safeties in here and field goals and.
Speaking of,
We're gonna talk about the TCS boys. Keep that in mind.
hey, speaking of picks, AJ, you have your Elite Eight for the for AAA.
Yes, I do. I gotta pull it up on my phone.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll throw out my championship preview. I'll go with Montour over Thomas Jefferson.
I have once again. I mean, West Allegheny at 1, Thomas Jefferson 2. I got Montour at 3, Franklin Regional at 4, Central Valley at 5, Ringgold at 6, Newcastle at 7, and Indiana at 8.
I'm going to have to go with West Allegheny over Thomas Jefferson.
Hard to argue with that. You know, West Allegheny usually, they're a run-oriented offense. They run probably one of the most dynamic defenses in the whole WPIAL with their sort of semi-zone blitz scheme that Bob Palco runs out there. So it's hard to argue with Bob Palco at Heinz Field.
It's hard to argue Parkway team not making the finals.
Yeah, well, I picked Montour.
I mean,
What are they? Is it 7 years in a row that the Parkway's been
read
7 years?
let me
Something
see.
like
I'm
that.
gonna look it up right now.
I think it's 7. Hang on. Let me pull up my playoff data spreadsheet here. By the way, if anyone out there has any playoff data from before 1980, please send it to me because I have data on the playoffs going back to 1980, but I don't have anything before that aside from championship games. Parkway has lost 6 AAA champions and has sent at least one team to the final in 9 straight years.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it is.
That's all you can say.
Parkway Conference is not only one of the best in the WPIAL, it's arguably one in the country, I think.
Yeah, top to bottom, that conference is just loaded, and I mean, there's a lot of programs with a lot of rich tradition there. I mean, even kind of the ones that have been at the bottom lately, like Blackhawk and Hopewell. You look back and I mean, Blackhawk won, Blackhawk went to 2 championship games in 3 years between 2006 and 2008. Hopewell's been to a few championship games and won the title in 2002. So, even though those programs are a little down on their luck recently, like that conference is just seeped with winning tradition.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's hard to imagine a Parkway team not being in the finals.
Yep, and I think they're going to send at least 1, maybe 2 there, even though I picked TJ this year. Yeah, moving on down to AA now, where Aliquippa has been pretty much the gold standard of AA. Absolutely incredible run over the last 5 years. Aliquippa has lost a conference game since 2009. They lost to Beaver Falls, and this one might be one of my favorite statistics. Aliquippa is 62-3 over the last 5 years against WPIAL opponents, and their only losses were to South Fayette in the championship game in 2010, 2013, and 2014.
Wow.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah. So here's the question: is this the year Beaver Falls beats them?
Beaver Falls has plenty of talent. They have plenty of talent. I think I'm not saying that Beaver Falls can knock them off, but I think they're capable, possibly. Where is that game? It all depends on that, too.
It's
I
at
haven't
Beaver
lost a
Falls.
game at the pit in so long, too.
It's at Beaver Falls, week 9.
If it's at Beaver Falls, it'll probably get played at is that Geneva College out there?
Geneva.
Yeah. They packed like almost 10,000 people in that stadium a couple years ago for the game there, so they'll probably play it there.
Yeah, they'll probably do it again because both teams should be 8-0 when they go into that game. I think if the game were earlier in the season, I think Beaver Falls would have a better chance just because you have to look at the offensive and defensive lines for both teams. Aliquippa lost pretty much everybody from last year. I know they've got Casey and Pugh back. They've got Twitter notifications.
That's probably
they got Casey and Pugh back. It was. Let me try it again. So, and then Beaver Falls, they've got everybody back on their lines. They've got Darrell Carter back, Nishad Akins, Torn Leak, and just a lot of experience on the lines. Their defense gave up 29 points a game last year, though, which they're going to have to fix that because Aliquippa led the AA in offense and defense, 48 points a game and 13 points allowed per game. So I think if the game were earlier in the year, Beaver Falls would have a chance. I think because it's in week 9, I think Aliquippa will be ready by then.
Can't mention Beaver Falls without talking about Donovan Jeter either, who's he's a junior, but he's getting a ton of Division I looks right now, and he's the younger brother of Sheldon Jeter, who plays basketball for Pitt. Actually, Donovan was getting looks at both basketball and football, but it looks like he's going the football route. Pretty much everyone you named, Steve, on Beaver Falls is a junior, so I don't know if they've got enough to beat Aliquippa this year, but I think next year might be the year. So I think those two are definitely the top 2 teams in the Midwestern Conference.
Yeah, just back to Jeter, I saw him play basketball last year 3 or 4 times, and he's very good at basketball. So if he's deciding to go the football route, he must be very good at football because he's a big force on the basketball court as well. So
I think they got a running back and a quarterback too. I can't remember their names though.
And actually, the in the Midwestern Conference, the battle for the last couple of playoff spots should be pretty good too. Beavers got Darius Wise coming back. He led the team in rushing and was second in receiving last year. They've got to find a quarterback, but Beavers scored 35 plus in every regular season game except for when they got hammered 55-0 by Aliquippa last year. So, Beavers got a pretty good program out there. Quaker Valley moved over into the Midwestern Conference this year, and I think Amos Luptak was their quarterback's name. He filled in for Dane Jackson last year when Jackson was hurt, and he's coming back, but he's only a junior, so they've got some time to build around him. And then Laurel, Elwood City, kind of the middle of the pack. New Brighton's been good the last couple of years, but they graduated almost literally their entire team. I think they had 14 seniors graduate off that team, so they've got some rebuilding to do. I've kind of got like Quaker Valley, Laurel, and Elwood City kind of penciled in around that last playoff spot.
Yeah,
Elwood City's a pretty good team.
Yeah, I've got Elwood City in that fourth spot behind Beaver, Aliquippa, Beaver Falls, Beaver, and then Elwood City. They got Nick Guinelli back. DJ Barrett's back for them. Their defense, much like everybody's in the Midwest, gave up a lot of points, though. And the team I've actually got right behind them, who I think can make a lot of noise this year, they return a lot of players on both sides of the ball. They're going to be good at the line play. Freedom. I know that's very shocking.
That is.
I think Freedom will be pretty good this year. They've got their quarterback back, top receiver, 2 top rushers. Their lines are all back. I think they should be pretty good. Quaker Valley, other than Amos Sleptak, they don't have a lot back. I'm sure it'll be nice for them to move back into a more geographically friendly conference. New Brighton made the playoffs last year out of this section, but they lost a lot of players to graduation. They got a couple guys back that can run the ball, but it's going to be hard to tell. I think other than Mohawk, I think even Laurel, they got a lot of question marks too. So I think Mohawk and Laurel will be bottom teams, but the rest of those 4 or 5 other teams will be looking for that final playoff spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in this conference, you got Aliquippa and Beaver Falls as 1, 2, and then there's the rest of the pack. And then there's the bottom of it.
Yep, and just to reiterate, as we said at the outset with Aliquippa, all of our thoughts and prayers are with DeMonte Brona and his family too, as he goes through his treatments for leukemia, which that was just announced this week that he was unfortunately had that diagnosis. So our thoughts and prayers are definitely with him and his family.
You could beat cancer.
Yeah. So moving on to the only team that's beaten Aliquippa in the last 5 years, South Fayette. Even though the Brumbaugh era has kind of come to an end there, they've got a lot of players back. Hunter Hayes ran for over 2,000 yards last year. Nick Ponakvar was their leading receiver, had over 1,000 yards. They're both back, and if they can find a quarterback, I think they're not only the best team in the Century Conference, but they should be right there, for the championship again this year.
Maybe they'll play Aliquippa for the 3rd straight year. Well, for all we know.
Yeah, they. What was even impressive about South Fayette is their defense is always really good too. They were, I think, second best in AA last year. Drew Sexton looks like he's going to be taking over quarterback. He got a lot of time in mop-up duty, I'm sure, last year. They've got Hunter Hayes back. Like you said, Nick Ponekvar is back. So there's definitely a lot of talent left down there in South Fayette, and I definitely expect them to at least win the Century Conference. We'll see. They'll probably Double A is not real stacked this year. They'll probably make it back to the WPIAL championship. So it'll be hard to see. They've got 32 wins in a row. So
they are Aliquippa's kryptonite.
They are actually their Beaver Falls. Their Beaver Falls kryptonite too. Is as crazy as that Aliquippa stat is. Up until last year, Beaver Falls had been knocked out of the playoffs by South Fayette 4 straight years: 2010, 11, 12, and 13.
That's impressive.
Yeah, for sure. Must
Yep.
be the green. Must be the green uniforms. That's all I can think of.
Yeah.
I got a question on Twitter. We got a question on Twitter.
Oh, hey, all right.
Maymarth80 asks, here's a question. The best dynasty in the WPIAL of all time.
Ooh. I'd go Aliquippa.
How far are we going?
I don't know.
I'm only 28 years old.
Yeah, I'm 29, but I'll go with Aliquippa. I think they've got 16 titles. I'll go with them.
I'll go with Aliquippa also.
Yeah, I've got all records since 1997, and Aliquippa has the best winning percentage since then. They're 231 overall, and that's 86.6 overall. They're actually second in their section winning percentage, 124 and 12. They're second behind Thomas Jefferson, who's 113 and 8. So I'd have to say Aliquippa as well. They just every year.
They're a double A. They're single A size, and they just keep producing talent.
That's what's even
amazing.
more impressive about that. Now, are we sure he was asking about the top dynasty and not somebody like Gabo Catholic or Albert Gallatin?
That's a good question too. That might be another debate for another time. I actually over the off season I wrote a top 25 programs of the last 10 years article, but it was pretty much primarily based on playoff data, and Clairton came out on top there just because they have 7 titles in the last 10 years, which is 4 more than anyone else has. But it was pretty close between Aliquippa, Thomas Jefferson at that 2-3 spot. So I'd say recently Clairton's definitely the best dynasty, but of all time I'd definitely go with Aliquippa.
When was the last time they lost? I don't know. There's like a stat on that or something. It's something incredible. I don't know. I'll have to look at it or something.
Aliquippa?
Yeah, when the last time they lost at home. It's been a long, long time.
Oh. I don't know what it is at home. I know the last time they lost to a WPIAL opponent was 2009. I think Beaver Falls beat them. I think that was a September 2009 game. That was the last time they lost to a conference opponent. Sorry.
Yeah. Must have been a down year. Well, yeah, so, I mean, continuing on with the conference, we've been talking about South Fayette the whole time. It is pretty much South Fayette the whole time. But I think Steel Valley will be, Steel Valley and Seton LaSalle will be fighting for that second spot. Dwayne Murray's back for Steel Valley. He's very good. They just need more consistency, I guess. They won their first 3 games last year, and then they went 3-4 the rest of the year, alternating wins and losses. So,
yeah, I think Murray had some injury issues last year.
Yeah,
he's he's one of the most explosive backs in the entire WPIAL. If you can make it out to a Steel Valley game, he's definitely worth the price of admission. I mean, he ran for almost 1,500 yards as a freshman and then like 1,250 last year. And, I mean, he's only a junior, but, I mean, he's definitely a threat to take it to the house anytime he touches the ball. I think the big question in the Century Conference is, South Fayette probably has the best roster top to bottom. They've got some question marks at quarterback, but Steel Valley and Seton LaSalle might have the best two athletes in the conference with Dwayne Murray and then Paris Ford at Seton LaSalle. And I guess, the question is just going to be, is Dwayne Murray and Paris Ford enough to get either one of those over top of South Fayette, or are Steel Valley and Seton LaSalle going to be fighting it out for that second spot?
Yeah, Seton LaSalle, they lost a lot, even though they do have Paris Ford back, though. He's good. They lost their quarterback and their receiver, so it should be interesting. I mean, I don't think they're better than South Fayette.
We got another question on Twitter.
Wow, we are shockingly popular.
At Maymarth80 again, he goes, another question, the best team in the WPIAL ever, 1 year, best team. It's got to be Clairton, when they scored over 700 points.
Yeah, that or the Jeanette team.
Yeah,
the prior Jeanette team.
I don't know. Would you take last year's Clairton team over the Bout That team though, with Tyler Boyd and Tarish Webb and Titus Howard?
I don't think so. I wouldn't.
No, I'd take last year's.
I wouldn't.
And actually, if you go back to Tyler Boyd's junior year, Trenton Coles was a senior too, who went to Pitt. So I mean, that was four Division I caliber or Division I athletes on a single A team. That was maybe the best team, was that Clairton team when Tyler Boyd was a junior. I'd say that the 2007 Jeanette team would be up there. Central Catholics put out some great teams. Pine Richland last year was a really good team too. North Allegheny's team the third year.
North Allegheny, yeah, there's one.
They were a really good team too. And I mean, even going back a ways, the West Allegheny team in like 99, 2000, 2001, they won 3 straight. I think that was when Tyler Palco was their quarterback, and that was a really good West Allegheny team. Thomas Jefferson won 4 championships in 5 years between 2004 and 2009. They had some just unbelievable teams there. Woodland Hills has had some great teams. That's a really tough question to answer, but I'd say I'd go with that Clairton team.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. Can't go wrong picking a Clairton team to be the best in a single year.
We can only dream of a Clairton-Aliquippa matchup.
Oh my gosh, I would pay ridiculous amounts of money to see that happen.
Yes, I would.
All right, he tweeted back at us, Jeanette 2008 is up there with the best of them as well.
Who do you guys like for that fourth spot in the Century Conference? I've kind of got South Park and East Allegheny sort of penciled in there to battle it out.
Yeah.
Bottom of that conference isn't all that great, like South Allegheny.
Yeah, I've got East Allegheny as my 4th team. They've got Deion Smith who does it all pretty much at the quarterback spot. Threw for 901 yards last year, ran for 607. He's got his wide receiver back, Rocco Dunn. South Park has to replace their dual threat quarterback from last year. They've got some running backs that have returned. Their defense is always pretty good at South Park too, but they lost their head coach, Tom Walker, and left South Park to go to Fox Chapel. So we'll have to see what kind of adjustment has to be made with that.
Yeah, South Park runs a pretty run-centered offense, so that can kind of cover a lot of mistakes. And I think they've got 2 of their top 3 rushers coming back, but I think it's going to be between them and East Allegheny.
Yeah, and like you said, the bottom of this conference is just awful. It is very bad. Keystone Oaks, I don't think is going to be good at all this year. Carleton, they got a 13-game losing streak. Who knows? They're pretty bad. Stowe Rocks gave up. They had the second worst defense last year. They're bad. South Allegheny's bad. They have to replace everybody. Hello.
One of my little guys woke up. You want to say hi? You say hi? Hi. Hi. Okay. You want to go back to bed?
Okay. Want to bring him on? Should I bring my little guy on?
Sure.
He's sleeping.
I don't have a kid.
19 days.
All right. You guys want to talk about the Allegheny Conference while I take this one back to bed? I like Apollo Ridge. I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Apollo Ridge is really good. Yeah, I went out last year and saw to go see Trey Tipton, and this kid, Dwayne Brown, he put on a frickin' show. This kid is an athlete. He is really good. I think he had like 6 touchdowns in that game. I was like, my goodness, what can't this kid do? Then Highlands is going to make a lot of noise in that conference too also. Highlands is a very, very good, capable team. They got a good quarterback in Timmons, I think is.
Braden Timmons, yeah.
He's a linebacker too. He's like 6'4", 225, so he's got good size.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Apollo Ridge and Highlands at the top for sure. You just fear these two teams being too one-dimensional. Dwayne Brown, he ran for almost 1,300 yards last year. He threw for 929 yards. But who's going to be catching?
Good. He's a pretty good running back also. I think I got him back.
I really like Freeport's chance.
I've got Freeport fourth. Shady Side Academy has a lot of
Got another
people back.
question from Maymarth 80. Best game you guys have seen in person?
I think you just mentioned yours, right? Highlands Apollo Ridge.
Highlands Apollo Ridge was a really yes. I will never forget that game. It was a spectacular game. I mean,
I'm a little biased as a North Catholic alum, so I'm going to say the WPIAL championship game that North Catholic won. I didn't go to the state championship game, but I went to the WPIAL championship game, so I'm going to say that one. But actually, my freshman year of high school, we played Bruce Gradkowski's Seton LaSalle team, first game of the year, and they stomped us. It was like 42-0. They just threw all over us. We played them again in the playoffs and played like 3 safeties high the whole game and shut down their passing game and beat them in double overtime. And the student section stormed the field. But I was in the bin, and we weren't allowed to run on the field. But that was probably my number 2 behind the championship game that North Catholic won.
I remember storming the field when we beat North Allegheny when I was back at Gateway. That was a fantastic game. But last year, the atmosphere in Highlands, it was packed. I mean, there was people lining the fences. That's how crowded it was, and the atmosphere. The crowd was so loud. It was unbelievable. It was just a spectacular game.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I don't really see a lot outside of North Allegheny and North Hills. So I'm just going to say anytime North Allegheny beats North Hills, it's a great game.
So the bottom of the Allegheny Conference isn't really much to speak about. So yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys that the top 4 teams there are pretty clearly Apollo Ridge, Highlands, Freeport, and Shadyside Academy. And pretty much Washington and maybe McGuffey, and then that's my live action version of the hands up emoji because
yeah, I actually didn't make it this far yet, so I'm gonna let you guys talk, and I'm just gonna wing it here after you guys.
Steve and I got into it a little bit on Twitter because I picked Burgettstown to make the playoffs to the 4th spot.
I mean, Washington and Mount Pleasant are clearly the best 2 teams in that conference. I mean, Washington returns some talent, and Mount Pleasant is typically a good team. So
yeah, let's see. For Mount Pleasant, Jake Adamovich ran for, I think he was their 3rd or 4th winning rusher last year. He had like close to 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Johnny Yester took over quarterback halfway through the season, so his numbers were a little down, but he was pretty solid. He threw for like 400 yards and 8 touchdowns and just playing half their game. So, we'll see if they give him a little more control of the offense this year. He had less than 10 pass attempts per game last year, so as is typical with some of these smaller schools, when we start talking about these conferences, they're definitely very run heavy. They're not as balanced, which is really what gives teams like South Fayette, Aliquippa, Beaver Falls some advantages in the AA spectrum. Is that a lot of these teams are very one-dimensional. The Mount Pleasant Washington game is definitely going to decide this. McGuffey was in it until the end last year. And that was their first trip to the postseason since 2009, so good for the Highlanders. But they graduated a lot of people.
They lost, yeah. They graduated James Dushai and Nate Whipke, and I actually know the offensive coordinator of McGuffey, and he's, you have to be optimistic going in, but this conference is so bad. It's so bad that you can maybe get through the first handful of games, half the season, and just kind of muddle through and figure things out. But, yeah, I don't know. Charleroi has a lot of people back. They might be able to get that 4th spot. Derry, they did a little bit better towards the end of last year. Burgettstown, I guess, is going to be around. They got a couple guys back at the skill positions, it looks like. So, I mean, other than Brownsville, I guess you can have Charleroi, Derry, Southmoreland, Waynesburg, and Burgettstown all shooting for that 4th spot.
Yeah.
But,
and I mean, kind of the way I was kind of looking at it with Burgettstown was like if they can get a win in week 1 against Waynesburg. Congratulations to the Raiders, by the way. I mean, they made the playoffs for the first time since 2003 last year, and got stomped by South Fayette. But hey, they made the playoffs for the first time since 2003. But I mean, they graduated pretty much their entire team. That was a very senior-heavy team. So if Burgettstown can steal a win in week 1 against Waynesburg, they've got the top teams in the conference after that. But then their October schedule is pretty much all the bottom teams. So they have a chance to kind of find their groove before they hit October. And obviously they'll have to improve on offense. I think they only scored like 14 or more points twice last year. Charleroi was a really weird team when I looked at them. I mean, they had a 700-yard rusher and hold on, let me find it again. They get a 700-yard rusher back. I'm sorry. But no, they had a really weird split last year. They had Yeah, they had a 1,600-yard passer and a 700-yard rusher in Brock Shannon, who's back this year. Matt Carr was their quarterback. He graduated, but he threw for 1,600 yards, and they were 1-8. I didn't understand how a quarterback can throw for 1,600 yards, and I mean, I guess if you
382.
Yeah.
It's allowed to do that, I guess.
Yeah. If you give up 38 points a game, that'll probably do it. But still, I mean, the other side of it was they only scored like 19 points a game. It was like they had so many yards of offense. So, really, the bottom end of this conference was just like fascinating. South Florida was really close to making their first playoffs since '79, but they lost pretty much their whole team. Brownsville hasn't won since October 2011, so that's 27 straight games. I think that's the second longest streak in the WPIAL behind Shaler. So
they win this year. Do they win this year?
I'll say they win this year.
Who's their non-conference? I guess I can look it up. I guess I can look it up, huh? Oh, they have Beaver the first week, so no.
That's a big no.
I'll say they steal one in there somewhere against they got Southmoreland at home. They've got Charleroi at home. I think
Burgestown.
No way, man. Burgestown's making the playoffs.
Maybe in basketball. Maybe in boys basketball. I don't know about football this year.
Somebody's got to make it. Somebody's got to be the fourth team here.
I have that tweet favorited. I'm gonna quote you when they're eliminated.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah. I've been wrong before. I'll gladly eat my words on this one.
Yeah. Join the club.
Jimmy, don't go to SWAT at him, Jimmy.
So AJ, you got a top 8 for AA here?
Yes, I do. Let me get it.
Oh my God.
Jimmy, go to your room. Go try.
Go Aliquippa, South Fayette, Beaver Falls, Highlands, Washington, Shadyside Academy, Mount Pleasant, and Seton LaSalle.
Hard to argue with that. I've got Aliquippa over Beaver Falls in the championship game. I think Beaver Falls finally figures out a way to solve South Fayette, and I think Beaver Falls is a team that's going to get better as the year goes on. They're loaded with juniors, so they'll just get better as the season goes. But can't pick against Aliquippa. So
I'm gonna go Aliquippa over Washington. Why not?
I'll go Aliquippa and
Are we leaving out South Fayette?
South Fayette. Why not? 3 years in a row. What are the odds?
I was gonna say people will think we don't know what we're talking about.
Well, you never know. I mean, we're just a couple dudes talking about high school football. So, moving on to Class A, where we've got Clairton coming off their historic season where they just ran through everyone until they reached the state championship game. Breaking WPIAL scoring record, breaking the state scoring record. Interestingly enough.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
In single A, there's Clarendon, there's the rest of the conference, and then there's the TCS.
Yeah.
3 levels.
That's pretty much true.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, anyways, interestingly enough, Clairton scored 958 points last year, which was 98 points more than Terrell Pryor's Jeanette team scored. And if Clairton had beaten that by 2 more points, they would have won the state championship, which they lost by 1 game. So if they'd gotten to that 100 over Jeanette, they might have won the state championship. But, I mean, Clairton is not only the best team in their conference, they're easily the best team in Class A. I mean, you've got probably the best junior in the entire WPIAL with Lamont Wade, who led the WPIAL in rushing last year with like over 2,700 yards and 47 touchdowns. I mean, he scored 316 points last year, which is more than 90 of the 124 schools did.
That's insane. Kid's got like a dozen. He's got 15 offers or something like that. I mean, as a junior, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think this conference will have one of the better races for the 4th and final spot. We've got teams like Jeanette, who lost, Julian Batts is gone. They've got a couple guys that can come back, and you've got Monessen with Dylan Rush, who's coming back. Lavelle Rush. Dylan's his brother. Lavelle Rush is back. Springdale has a lot of experience coming back on offense and defense, so they should be involved in it. And, maybe even Riverview. They've got a lot of guys back as well. But, you can't go against Clairton. They're just... Yeah, I don't even know what to say.
That conference.
Yeah, I don't even know. You can't even say anything about them, really. They're probably going to allow under 5 points per game throughout the regular season. That's what I think.
Who lets up more? Question: Who lets up more points, Clairton or Central Catholic?
Central.
Yeah, I think Central, just because it's Quad A. Teams will find a way. There's just more opportunities, but it'll be close. I think it'll be close. I think they'll both be under 7 points a game.
Since we asked it about Central Catholic, I'll ask it about Clairton. Who scores first on them?
You gotta pull up the schedule.
All right, it's California, Wilkinsburg, Greensburg Central Catholic, and Springdale are their first 4. I've actually got Greensburg Central Catholic penciled in second in this conference. They've got some guys coming back that I think they're a pretty good team. They're not nearly as good as Clairton is, but I think they're good enough to score on Clairton.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely don't think it'll be California. Definitely won't be Wilkinsburg. That game might be 80-0 at halftime. Greensburg Central, probably. I'd go with Greensburg Central as well. And if not, I think Springdale can score against them as well.
After Clairton in that conference, it's going to be Greensburg Central Catholic and
Solo home run.
And Jeanette. And that alarm means I gotta take my medication.
Uh-oh.
All right. We'll
need you most.
Yeah. Actually, since we're talking about Springdale, interesting sort of rivalry between Springdale and Monessen. This is only the second year they're playing in a conference together, but between 2003 and 2011, Springdale knocked Monessen out of the playoffs 6 times in an 8-year span, and then Springdale beat them last year. That basically knocked Monessen out of the playoffs too. So, since 2003, that's 7 times that Springdale's essentially either actually knocked Monessen out of the playoffs or essentially ended their playoff hopes.
It's just crazy how that works, because we had that earlier about Beaver Falls losing to South Fayette handful of years in a row,
Yeah.
Yeah, but the bottom of this conference, as usual, Wilkinsburg, Sarah Catholic, and Leechburg, pretty bad. There are a lot of bad teams that are in football that you just don't have a shot going in every night.
Yeah, Sarah Sarah was the one team last year that, they were carrying the longest losing streak in the WPIAL, and, you kind of wanted to see them win, and they had that heartbreaking loss against West Green in there, and then
that 4 overtime game, yeah. It was like
yeah.
44-41.
Yeah, and then
Game of the year.
they finally got the monkey off their back at the end of the year, and they beat Wilkinsburg by 2 in the season finale. So actually, I think if Sarah finds a way to stop people from scoring, they gave up like 48 points a game last year. If they can stop people from scoring, they might have a chance to actually win a couple games this year, at least over Wilkinsburg and Leechburg and maybe Riverview.
They lost a lot of talent last year, though. But yeah, how many points? 3 games against Wilkinsburg, Sarah Catholic, and Leechburg. How many average points will Clairton score against them?
I'll go 75.
75?
Yeah.
So that's what I would have said too. Maybe over.
I'll go 78.
It is crazy how good they are and how good they're going to be this year.
Good thing they're not in the TCS. Good God. They'd be winning every game 80-0.
And they're going to want to make up for losing the state final game last year. So.
Yeah, they're going to be out for blood. So. Well,
the national record is 1,023, set by some team in Texas. I can't remember who it was.
1,023 in 16 games. Wow.
In Texas, they do it different down there, though. They don't care. They just score as many points as they want.
Yeah. That's only 64 points a game. So, I mean, for a team like Clairton playing in Class A, like 64 points a game isn't undoable.
Yeah, maybe.
The hard thing with Clairton is like that, their roster size is so small that, sometimes they can't pull these kids out of the game, and all they're doing is handing the ball off. And I mean, you don't want to embarrass the other team by taking a knee. So I mean, you're just handing the ball off on offense, or you force turnovers on defense. You're going to run the ball back for touchdowns. So like, a lot of, even when the mercy rolls on and the clock's running, like, when you only have like 22 or 23 players on your team, you gotta do something on offense, and sometimes their freshmen are better than other people's seniors.
Yeah, I'm definitely under the impression of, if I were coaching anywhere, the other team has to stop us. I'm going to keep going. And some people have different views of that. I'm sure that wouldn't float with parents real well and whatever. I'm sure it doesn't, but
I mean, I heard they played with some injured players last year because they have to have a certain amount of players out there on the field. So that's how small they are. I mean, people don't understand that. They really don't. It's a shame, but they just have too much talent.
Yeah. So, I mean, the real question in Class A right now is, who's going to be on the other side of the bracket from Clairton? Because I mean, you can almost put Clairton in almost permanent marker all the way to the championship game. So the real question is, who gets lucky enough to be seated on that other half of the bracket, and won't have to face them before Heinz Field. Avonworth made it there last year. They beat my alma mater, North Catholic, who is the defending state champions. I've been good, you guys. I've only mentioned they won the state championship like 3 times so far. So, but I think Avonworth and North are definitely the best 2 teams in the Black Hills Conference. Although there's some other good teams there. I mean, Brentwood's good. Fort Cherry's got some guys coming back. Chartiers Houston could be good. So The Black Hills might actually be the deepest conference in Class A.
Is that a segue?
Yeah, that's a segue.
Okay, all right, good enough. Yeah, for sure, definitely the deepest conference. I agree with you. Avonworth has a ton back from last year. I know you don't want to hear that. I've got them first. Zach Chandler's back, 6'4" quarterback, threw over 700 yards in the first 3 games last year before he got hurt. He's good. Jamal Hughley, another basketball player that I've seen plenty of times, very good. Kevin Sampson is back for them in the backfield. They've got receivers back. They've got linemen back. Their defense is always good. So, yeah, definitely Avonworth, Cardinal Wuerl North Catholic. You know, they're always good. They're going to be up there, too. Losing Fulmore and Turner is going to hurt, but Mario Latronica he could have a big year.
He can absolutely fly. I mean, he is so fast with the ball in his hands. I actually, it pains me to say this as a North Catholic alum, but I agree with you. I had Avonworth first in the conference too. They might have one of the biggest skill position groups this side of Clareton. I mean, like you said, Zach Chandler's 6'4". I think Jamal Hughley is like 6'2". Cole Jenkins, the wide receiver, 6'1". Garrett Day is another wide receiver. He's 6 foot. I mean, that's just a big group of kids there, and they're loaded with experience from going to Heinz Field last year. And I mean, pretty much North Catholic against Avonworth is going to decide that conference, and it's always a great game. It should be at Avonworth this year because North was at home last year. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how North handles things with Bob Ravenstall no longer being the coach, but they've got Jason Gilden as their head coach now, so we'll see if he tries to fist fight anybody.
Are they playing their home games at Stone again, or I see Mars High School on the schedule too?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird split because they were supposed to build a stadium out by the new school, but they haven't got enough money to do it yet. But I think Vincentian's also playing their home games at Stone Field, so I think North and Vincentian are kind of working it out to figure out who, depending on who's got home games what week, where they're playing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Lopes, they got a herd of talent. And there's my pun for the night. They are the #1 conference in that team, in that conference. For sure. And then North Catholic is definitely second in that conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of good running backs back, too, in this conference. Brentwood's got, I can't remember his first name right now, Carr. Pat Carr. That's it.
Yeah.
Pat Carr. Fort Cherry's got Nick Cook back. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see who's got that 4th and final spot there. Bishop Canavan's got a lot of good players back. Olsh has a lot of good players back. So, this will be another tight conference to see the 4th and final playoff spot. But I definitely think it's Avonworth, Cardinal Wuerl. I would put Brentwood 3 for sure. And then after that, any of the 5 teams that are below, I think, could get the 4th and final spot.
Yeah, last year those teams all kind of beat themselves, and like Chartiers Houston kind of rose above it. Because I think Chartiers Houston was 4-3 in the conference last year, and then like Northgate and Fort Cherry both had 2 wins, and Olsh and Canavan both had 1. So, you know, a lot of those teams at the bottom kind of just beat each other last year. So, yeah. But actually, one of the things I liked about Fort Cherry this year was that you know, 3 of those games they lost last year were by 3 points or fewer. So, I mean, you figure they were 2-5 in the conference last year. They could pretty easily flip that to 5-2 and be right there in the playoff hunt.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that had to be tough after they lost that Colton Cobrees, I think his name was, because they were semifinalists 2 years ago, 10-2, I think. So yeah, who knows?
They were quarterfinals, I think.
Quarterfinal.
Yeah. Was that the year? I think they played Clareton in the quarterfinals that year, actually.
Okay.
So I think that was the year that Monessen actually won. That was when Clareton, Monessen, and Fort Cherry all kind of beat each other, I think. And yeah, because that was the year North Catholic won the championship. Because Clareton was on the same side of the bracket as Stowe Rocks, and North was on the other side. And Monessen got knocked off by Neshannock in the quarterfinals that year, and then North beat Neshannock in the semifinals, which provides a nice segue to talking about the Big Seven Conference, which Neshannock kind of rose out of the ashes. They didn't make the playoffs at all I think they had one playoff appearance between 1983 and 2011, and they've been to the semifinals each of the last 3 years. They've never been to the championship game, so I don't know if this is the year Neshannock gets there, but they're definitely the best team up in the Big Seven Conference.
They are a capable team, though, for sure. Neshannock they're really good, for sure.
Yeah, it was a weird section last year. You know, you expected Western Beaver to be up near the top with Hunter Rocknich, and it ended up being Southside Beaver, who has been terrible for years, Shenango, who hasn't been very good for years, making the playoffs last year, and then you had Rochester near the bottom. It just weird. And this year seems it's looking like it's going to be something pretty close to the same. You know, that'll be a good fight between Rochester, Riverside, and Shenango for the third and fourth spots in the section. Vincentian Academy, you don't know what you're going to get with them. They only have maybe 25 players that are on the roster.
Yeah, I actually I've got Riverside penciled in second. They got a junior quarterback, Jason Dombach, who threw for over 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns last year, and that's pretty much more offense than anyone else in the conference is bringing back that's not named Neshannock. Neshannock's quarterback, also a junior, Frank Antuono, threw for like 1,700 yards and 20 touchdowns, and then ran for like 500 yards and 12 touchdowns. So, Neshannock's got a dual-threat quarterback who can definitely lead them to the title, but I think Riverside, with their wide-open offense, I've got penciled in the second spot. And then I've got Shenango and Rochester, but like you said, it's pretty open. I mean, Southside Beaver could be there. And then like Vincentian, Western Beaver, Union. Union made the playoffs a couple years ago. It was kind of a surprise.
Southside Beaver, I think they return plenty of talent. I think they're not going to beat Neshannock, but I think they're probably the second best team in that conference. I'll go out on a limb and say that.
Yeah, I agree as well. And, Rochester, it's really weird. They missed the playoffs for a second straight year last year after making it every year since 1996. They've got a nice running back. Montreal Strozier ran for 1,000 yards last year, 11 touchdowns. So their defense was what let them down last year. They allowed like 28 points a game or something like that. But, yeah, Riverside should be very good with Dom back in there too. So should be a good fight for the playoffs in that conference.
Yep. Which leads us to our favorite conference, which is basically Beth Center and everybody else in the Tri-County South. Which, the TCS hasn't won a playoff game since 2010. They're probably the most maligned conference in the whole WPIAL. They get disadvantaged seeding because of it, but they've got to go out and beat somebody at some point. Pretty much the conversation begins and ends with Beth Center, though. they've really been the dominant force there. They've been undefeated in the
Best
regular
center,
season.
Frazier, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Best center's got running back Anthony Welsh back. He ran for like 1,200 yards as a sophomore and 1,600 yards last year as a junior. So he scored like 51 touchdowns over his career. So I think best center is definitely the best team, but Frazier's kind of snuck their way in there too. They were this sounds strange, but they were the only TCS team to compete, which tells you how much better best center is than everybody else. But Alvin Ross was kind of Frazier's go-to player last year. He had like over 1,000 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns as a sophomore. They split quarterbacking duties between sophomore and a junior last season, so we'll see who wins the battle there. I think it was Hunter Patterson and Chris Pierce were the two there, but it's really Frazier and Beth Center are the top two teams, and their head-to-head game's going to decide that conference.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be week 6, October 2nd, I think it is. Maybe, yeah, October 2nd. But yeah, that game was close last year. Best Center only won 29-20, and
that was Best Center's only close game. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And Alvin Ross, you mentioned him for Frazier. He actually transferred to Greensburg Central Catholic.
Oh, did he? Oh, I missed that one.
Well, that's what MSA Sports has, at least. As I'm reading their notes here. So I think if they had him, I think they could give Best Center a run. But I think without him, Frazier will be second place team in the conference for sure.
Well, lucky me, my TCS preview drops tomorrow, so I've got time to go in there and change it.
Good timing. Yeah, but Jefferson Morgan has a lot of players back. Mapletown has the Rush brothers back in the backfield. Dillon ran for 1,000 yards as a freshman last year. So they might have a pretty good team in there. They could be the third team. California's probably right around there too, but yeah, this conference is bad. At least Geibel's gone. That's all I can say. We have another question.
Has some players coming back if they can figure out how to give up 40 points a game, then they might be able to sneak their way into the conversation too. But Bentworth has a lot of players coming back. Jefferson Morgan. Close in it this year.
I would love if Avella could get in this year. And we got another question, by the way, on Twitter.
Oh, go for it.
Maymarth 80 again.
What
Your
is that?
thoughts on 6 classifications?
I'm not a fan. I think at least for as far as the WPIAL is concerned, it spreads things out too much. And I mean, at least geographically, as far as figuring out conferences and schedules, like the travel time that it would add to teams would be insane. I kind of tried to pencil out how it would look with 6 classifications and where the teams would be. And I think actually what you might see is teams purposefully playing up so that they don't have to travel as far. I mean, it's unfortunate to say this, but we kind of live in a time where everyone's schools are cutting their budgets and cutting things for athletics, and travel costs start to add up. Gas is expensive. School buses are expensive. The insurance on school buses is insane. You would not believe what the insurance is on school buses. But so I think I think 6 classifications is definitely something that benefits District 1 and District 3 out by Philadelphia in the eastern part of the state, but I don't like how it would shake out for the WPIAL in the western part of the state.
Plus, you got to factor in addition to they wouldn't be able to play all their championships in one day, too.
I think that's the biggest problem the WPIAL has.
Massive problem.
I
So
definitely.
yeah, I'm not a fan of it at all. I
Yeah.
hate it. I mean,
Yeah, either am I. I definitely think that's the biggest hang up for the WPIAL. They want to have all 4 championships on the same day in the same place. That way people can just go to one spot and see, 4 games. And also, it, like you said, Ian, it just thins things out too much in the WPIAL. I think in 6A you'd have Hempfield, Seneca Valley, and North Allegheny, and maybe Butler. I can't remember exactly what the cuts were, but it's just. And then what do you do with the other non-section dates? Are you playing teams from the WPIAL, or are you playing other 6A schools from Division 9, 6, 10, 5? Well, there's no big schools in Division 5. Never mind. So, yeah, I don't. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know.
I heard that if they do go to 6 classifications, WPIAL might stay at 4, which I don't have a problem with at all.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of finances they get from the state, the PIA, and how much they would lose or what they would gain with that. I don't know.
And I think that they would eliminate state playoffs too.
Yeah,
Which would
for
be,
sure, yeah. And I think most teams just seem to care about the WPIAL championship anyway.
yeah.
So.
Yep. So to kind of put a wrap on things here, as we're coming up on the 2-hour mark for this show. AJ, you got a top 8 for Class A?
Yes, I do. Let me get it out.
I'm gonna guess Clareton's number 1.
Nah. Clarendon, Avonworth, Neshannock, North Catholic, Greensburg Central Catholic, Jeanette, Southside Beaver, and Best Center.
Yep. I'm gonna be a homer and go with Clareton over North Catholic in the championship game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Clareton over. I gotta think Avonworth's gonna get back there again. They made the championship game close at the beginning last year. I was there for most of it, and I think they can hang with them. I don't know. I think Avonworth can hang with Clareton. I think they can.
Neshannock hung with Clareton last year. That was a really close.
Right. So.
And say Clarendon and Neshannock. I'm going against. I like
Nice pick.
Avonworth, but Neshannock.
Heard a good variety of.
That was Clarendon and Neshannock. I mean, Neshannock gave them a scare, a huge scare. It was like 49-42 or something like that. It was a fantastic game, and I was shocked to see that Neshannock gave them a game.
Yeah, it was. Did that game go to overtime? I think it did, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
Right, I think it did.
Yep. So, well, thanks guys for taking part in our second WPIAL preview show. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back together, during the season and do this again. You guys want to give a shout out for your blogs, Twitter, all that stuff?
Yes, my name is Andrew Schaefer, and I run AJ WPIAL and WPIAL Football Zone on Facebook page and Twitter.
Yep. And I'm Steve Ritchie, and I am at Buck Fever. That's BUC Fever 422, and I post a lot of updates and retweet a lot of goofy stuff. Whoops. A lot of people mute me or unfollow me for the high school sports seasons. But I'll be at North Allegheny, host Seneca Valley this week. I'll be there with updates Friday night. So.
You be upon Richland?
Yeah, probably the week 2, right? North Allegheny at Pine Richland. Yeah, I'll probably be there as well. I try to stay local. I've given up driving through the Liberty tunnels into the South Hills and even the eastern communities is like Monroeville.
AJ, you going to any games this week?
I'm staying home for Upper St. Clair and Penn Hills, which is on my network TV.
Nice. Yeah. Channel 22 is showing games now. And obviously, the games will be broadcast on MSA Sports. Our buddy Josh couldn't be with us tonight. He had a fantasy football draft, but he does a lot of their social media stuff. You can follow them at MSA Sports and check out their website. They have the best scoreboard page around. It's always the fastest one to be updated, usually like an hour and a half before the Post-Gazette is done. And then they obviously have live broadcast games on Friday nights and some other spots on Twitter to find things. I know Woodland Hills Football Network broadcasts their games. And there's a really good amount of WPIAL Twitter feeds. I'd say Avonworth, Penn Hills, West Allegheny, Woodland Hills have some of the best school Twitter feeds out there. So definitely check them out as well. My name's Ian. I'm the Steelers and At on Twitter. You can check out my blog, which is thesteelersandat.com. I have the best WPIAL standings page on the internet. It's the only one with all the tiebreakers listed on it. So a bit of a shameless plug for myself. I've got conference by conference previews up, and I'll get the YouTube video of this posted up this week. So thanks, guys, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for sending in questions to us to answer. And hopefully everyone stays safe in their travels, and we have a good season with very, very few injuries. That's one thing you hate to see with high school kids or with kids at any level of sport is getting injured. So hopefully we have a great season, and best of luck to all the teams, and we'll see you throughout the season as we recap what's been going on and start the way to the playoffs. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm Ian. You can find me on Twitter at @thesteelersandAt. Have a good night.
Vessel.
Burgettstown.
Albert Gallatin and York, Game of the Year.
Wait.
And one final thought before we leave, too. Obviously, as we start out the show, best wishes to Monte Brona and his family as well. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Go get him.